This is a tutorial in which I'm going to show you how to create all of the graphics needed for a clock, to create a clock in Corona SDK. We're going to create these graphics in Adobe Illustrator CS6, and the graphics we'll create are the clock face, the hands, and probably we're going to do a shine effect as well. So let's get started. First, you run Illustrator, and you're going to create a new file. So go to File and choose New, and from there make sure that your units are set to pixels. By default they could be set to inches or points. It doesn't really hurt to have them as another unit, but really pixels makes the most sense when you're dealing with mobile applications. I like to give myself a generous artboard space, so I'm going to give myself a 2400 by 2400 pixel artboard, and then just click OK. And this is our default artboard, and from here we're going to create the clock face. Now before I can do that, I want to set some guides to locate the rough center of this artboard. So to do that, we're going to turn on our rulers by hitting Command R to show the rulers, and bring your cursor up to the top ruler there and click and then drag down. And then drop that line, this is the guide, roughly in the center of the artboard. It doesn't have to be exact because we're going to grow a circle that's much larger than we're going to need in our final version. Now go to the left, and then click and inside that ruler area, and then drag the second guide, and we're going to just try to drop that right in the center as well. It may not be perfect, but that's not going to be a problem. Now that we've got our guides in place, we can draw our circle. So click on the ellipse tool by clicking here on the shape palette and choosing ellipse. And then place your cursor at the intersection of the two lines. It says intersect conveniently when you get your cursor in the right spot. And then click, hold down Option and Shift, and then drag. And that will allow you to grow a perfectly symmetric circle. And then let go and then of the mouse, and then let go of your modifier keys. Now we have a circle. Now this circle has a default fill, as indicated here in this box, of white. You can also see the fill box right here. I don't want a fill for this, and we'll see why later, but for now let's turn the fill off by clicking on this little drop down arrow, and we're going to choose this little white square with the red slash through it. Now the other one is the line or the stroke, and for the stroke we do want a stroke. We want that to be black, and I'm going to choose black. It is chosen already, and then I'm going to increase the stroke width by changing this number. I'm just going to bump it up, and as you can see, the line gets thicker on the clock. We're going to put it up to 10 pixels. Okay. Now next we're going to create the tick marks that go around the clock. So you're going to need 60 of those. And to do that, you're going to use the line segment tool, and that's this tool right here on the palette, the line segment tool. And what we'll do is we're going to create the tick mark at the 12 o'clock position. So place the cursor so that you're right at the center of that guide and the line on that circle, and then click, and then while holding Shift, this constrains the direction. Drag down. It's really up to you how far you want to go, but I'd say this is about right. And then let go, and you will have a tick mark. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create more of these tick marks to go all the way around. And in order to do that, we're going to need to use the rotate tool. So let's click on that rotate tool over here. I'm going to double click on it just to show you what we have. In this rotate tool, you have an angle that you can set. Now that angle is going to rotate that about the axis of the object you have selected. And currently we have the tick mark selected, and it's going to rotate the tick mark around the center of that tick mark. This is not what we want. So we're going to close that. And what we're going to do is we're going to, while we're on the rotate tool, while we have this selected, we're going to go down to that center and we're going to option click. And that will bring up the rotate toolbox again. But the difference is we've relocated our axis from the center of the tick mark down to the center of the clock face. So now what we can do is we can turn on preview and we can go into the angle box and we can put in 6 degrees. And then let's turn on preview and see what happens. So that puts it at the 59-second position when we do that. So at this point, don't click OK. What we want to do is click copy. And what it'll do is make a copy of the tick mark at the new location. So let's do that. So now that we've used copy, we can do that copy multiple times by doing Command or Control D to duplicate that. So I'm going to do Command D. And I'm just going to keep pressing it until I go all the way around the clock face. Now I'm just going to hold it down and I'll just put on the brakes and do the last 2. So now we have a clock face with 60 tick marks. The next step is to create the numbers. Now for the numbers, we're going to need to create another set of guides which we'll use just to line the numbers up. And to do that, we're going to use the polar grid tool, which you'll find under this line tool. We go to the line segment tool, we go down to the very last option, the polar grid tool. Now before you can do anything with the polar grid tool, you're going to need to set up the polar grid tool. To do so, just double click it. And here you'll see 2 options that we're interested in, the concentric dividers and the radial dividers. Now concentric dividers are the number of circles inside of the grid you're going to create. The number of circles, sort of like the number of rings in a tree stump. This is not what we want. We don't want any of these concentric dividers, so what we're going to do is set that to 0. What we do want is the correct number of radial dividers. These are the number of lines that radiate out from the center of your anchor point. And in this case, because we want 12 hours, we're going to need 12 numbers or 12 radial dividers. So click 12 here, type 12 here, and then click OK. Now the polar grid tool is set up. We're going to place our cursor, making sure the polar grid tool is still selected, which it is. Place our cursor at the center. We're going to hit Option Shift and click, and we're going to grow this grid out. Now we're not going to go all the way to the tick marks. We're going to stop right about there. Let off the mouse and your keyboard modifier keys, and now you've got something that looks kind of like a bicycle tire. Now these things, from this next step, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to lock all of these objects so that we can't make changes to them or move them inadvertently. So to do so, select them all like this, then go to Object, Lock Selection. And now I can click anywhere in here and I can't move or alter anything, which is what we want. Our next step is to actually create the numbers, and I'm going to do that in our next video.